Good evening. This is Perrysburg City Council for August 18, 2020. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Okay, Ms. Bourne.
Here.
Mr. Coolman.
Here.
Ms. Materney.
Here.
Mr. Matuzak.
Here.
Mr. McCarthy.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Van Hoosen.
Here.
Thank you.
Please join me if you're able and stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, minutes of the council meeting, special council meeting of July 28th and the public hearing of August 10th. Need those approved?
Yes, that's right. My parents decided to turn off my computer there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I did talk to one member of council here on a quick correction, so I'm going to move to approve the minutes of the city council meeting held on July 28, 2020 with a correction of the vote for appointment of 5-1 in favor, with Mr. Matuzak voting in favor of that.
So I will.
That is the motion. Is that correction?
I'll second that one.
Roll call.
Okay,
I'd like to propose a motion. I think the minutes of the public hearing should be amended to strike the reference to a statement by Mr. Bainhoff, who this prepared statement was sent to us.
I was going to bring that one separately, so we can do that separately. That's okay.
Okay, so we're doing one at a time, I bet.
Yep.
Yes,
Okay, so this is the minutes of July 28th, 2020, as amended.
correct.
And seconded. Roll call.
okay, Ms. Bourne.
Yes.
Mr. Coolman.
Yes.
Ms. Materney.
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak.
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Van Hoosen.
Abstain.
And then for the public hearing, Mr. McCarthy, you said you have a correction you'd like to add on there?
Yeah, I think the reference to the email sent by Mr. Bainhoff should be stricken. This statement that was read is something he sent to council on August 10. The next day, he sent us another email and he said, please disregard the statement I sent the day before. Also, he doesn't say he's speaking on behalf of, but he says he's a member of the Methodist Church, and as the minutes reflect, the pastor of that church was present and stated the church hasn't taken any position on the door. I wanted to make that clear. So I believe the reference to the Bainhoff email should be deleted.
I will make a motion then at this point to approve the August 10th minutes as amended.
That's my question. So, Tim, I understand what you're saying, but I understand what you're saying and why you're saying it. But are we going to say that it wasn't read because it was? Maybe we should just clarify in the minutes that he later said something. That actually was read.
I would state that it
I
was.
couldn't hear,
Hold on.
I couldn't hear everything you said.
I'm sorry. I mean, I think I heard what you said, and I understand why you're making the motion that you are, or that you want it clearer, I suppose. But that statement was read, and so maybe we should add something to it. You know, amend it to say what you just said, that he later sent an email in, or something to,
What if,
what was read was read, I mean.
if you don't mind, what if we put on here, there was a statement read by Dalen Van Hout, who then requested to have that statement.
Or later, something, I mean,
Just retract
we don't want to
Yeah.
pretend it never happened.
That's fine.
I would state that
Hold on.
it should remain. It was part of the meeting.
Okay. So you're making a motion.
I'm going to retract my first motion, and I will state that I would like to make a motion to approve the August 10th public hearing meeting minutes with the statement of Mr. Van Hout removed, stating that he had further request from the citizen to remove that statement.
That's fine.
So the details of the statement won't be in there, just the
Just that the
fact that
question.
he did, okay, gotcha. I'm good
Does
with
that make sense?
Second, says pending
Okay.
motion, I'll second.
All right, so discussion.
I would say that I am not going to be voting for that because that was stated at the meeting. Mr. Ravenhoff was aware that I was going to read the letter. That is not the minister of the church. The minister of the church is Mr. Jennings.
Okay, any other discussion? If not, roll call.
Okay, Ms. Bourne,
No.
Mr. Coolman,
Yes.
Ms. Materney,
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Special reports, we have no special reports. Letters, communication, and citizen concerns. If you have a concern, come to the microphone unless it's about a particular item that we know council's going to be covering through its council agenda. Seeing nobody rushing to the mic. Move forward to the administrative report. I do have an administrative report, and it's explain why all the firefighters are lurking somewhere. But before I do that, the city has a proclamation for Doug Dariano, who has retired. And I'll just read a couple paragraphs, or summarize a couple paragraphs. Doug started working for the city on January 22nd, 1991. He distinguished himself with his hard work and dedication as a public servant. He received an award as the Engineer of the Year from the Toledo Society of Professional Engineering. His work was instrumental in a number of projects throughout the city: the multi-use path, State Route 25 improvements, the Indiana Cherry Finley Street intersection, and a number of other projects. He served in the military with distinction and was a captain of the United States Navy civil engineer, and served in Iraq. We want to wish Doug a happy and long retirement, and thank him for his service. The proclamation is signed by myself as mayor and with all the council members, so we want to make sure to recognize Doug for his service. So we appreciate that. Next, all the police Perrysburg Fire Division officers who are present have successfully completed the process that awards the professional designation of fire officer, fire marshal, or chief fire marshal. The nationally recognized Commission on Professional Credentialing met on July 7, 2020 to confer the designations of the following individuals. We have very nice little plaques for everybody. So we'll just start with, I've never heard it called anything other than Al Bagonis, but Alan Bagonis. Tell you what, we'll stand talk, we'll smile, take your mask off, speak to your face, and then you guys can get a group picture in the hallway there. You want to go down and handle for you? Sure. That's fine. Next is Lieutenant Joel Kuznani. I'll get that right someday. Sorry. It was like 5 squaring in. Joel Whitmer, Captain Joel Whitmer.
Just for the record, look at the teamwork between council and administration. Captain Nate Berkshire. Captain Tom Sampson. Congratulations. Fire Marshal Aaron Harwell. Maybe we we should keep our mask on.
Congratulations.
Deputy Fire Chief Tom Granada. Congratulations.
Yeah. Don't have enough too much sense. We gotta go this a little. I'm trying to get close.
And Chief Rudy Ruiz.
That's good.
Well, let's give a round of applause for Chief, do you want to explain what they did and how they got it? I think it's appropriate.
The Center for Public Safety Excellence is a third-party organization that's internationally recognized. What they do is every fire officer has to submit an application that indicates their training, education, and experience. And this third-party organization gathers peer assessors from throughout, not just the United States, but throughout the world, and they evaluate their application. And they say, yes, you do deserve this designation of fire officer, fire marshal, or chief fire officer. This is a proud moment for not only for myself, but for the city of Perrysburg, because very rarely does every officer in the fire department receive a designation much like this. So it's quite an accomplishment, not only for the individuals, but for the city of Perrysburg. So I appreciate all their efforts, and I applaud you for a fantastic job. Thank you very much.
Although it goes without saying, we want the administration and council also want to recognize you for all your service, but this is a particularly great honor for the whole team, and we thank you very much.
Chief, I would say thank you very much for all your efforts. I'll be happy to see you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Do you guys want to, you got them? Shannon, do you have enough pictures, or are you meeting them over there? All right. We should also thank their families as well for, because it is a team effort. We appreciate that.
You're welcome.
That ends my report. Other than, as you've seen, we have accepted applications for the Director of Law, and we're moving forward with that. So I'll turn it over to the Administrator. Do you have any report?
No report, Your Honor?
That's a no report in case anyone was listening outside the building. Finance Director?
And I have no report either.
Just gonna stare a minute. Director of Law?
No report.
Thank you. President of Council? Thank you, Your Honor. I don't have a report here. I do have an ordinance to read and introduce. So before I jump into that, I just wanted to share with the administration that I have received a couple communications from some individuals already concerned regarding Halloween. I know we're several months from that, but I wanted to share those concerns with the administration. I know it's an administrative decision, but there's definitely several individuals who would like to see that move forward this year. Appreciate that. And you can, I think I've got some of those as well, but if I haven't, please let us know. Because yes, we're aware of that. You know, and it's something that's coming up on us real quick. With that being said, there is an ordinance I would like to introduce for a first reading here that hopefully has some discussion after we read through this. I do have a list of things if it's okay with the mayor here to go through all these recommendations to have those discussions line by line. With that being said, I would like to introduce Ordinance 7, 2020, and move the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only.
Okay.
Roll call.
Okay, Ms. Bourne,
No.
Mr. Coolman,
Yes.
Ms. Materney,
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance number 7, 2020, an ordinance creating a designated outdoor refreshment area for downtown Perrysburg and enacting regulations and declaring an emergency.
All right, there's nothing pending, but we anticipate having discussion.
Yes, thank you. With that being said, what I was hoping that we could do is go through a few different things on here. I know that there are some council members that have shown their support for this, as well as some that have shown their not support for this, is probably the better way to put it. However, I think it's important for us that we have a discussion, that if this should pass, that we have discussion on several different items on here that are very important to the fabric of the door should it pass. With that being said, I would like to start with one of the first things on the list here, which is a designated number of years for the existence of the door. I know there was a request for 5 years, if I recall correctly. In the ordinance that we have in front of us, it is 2 years. And I was hoping we could have some discussion on that. Is that acceptable in 2 years if this was to pass, or is there something that any other councilman would like to have add to that?
Mr. Smith, I would add that it says in the application that they wanted it for 5 years.
Okay.
I'm good with the 2-year kind of provisional period, so to speak.
Everyone's comfortable with the 2 years on in the ordinance as it is.
At this point, I'm not entirely in favor of the legislation, but I will still say I would be okay with 2 years if we had a review after the first year, just to see how things are going. Regardless of how long it is, at least once a year, there should be a review to see how it's going.
Maybe it's a report to one of the committees.
To a committee or to the council as a whole, but it needs to be reviewed since it's new, see how it's going. That's my opinion anyway.
I agree with Council Member Matuzak. And just a reminder and clarification that we can pull this anytime.
That is my understanding as well. That if there is, it becomes an issue, city council can revoke the door if this does pass at any particular time.
Just to clear, through proceedings that are similar to
Right.
this. Okay. I just want to make it clear
Yes.
for everyone.
And I would be okay with having 1 year review through a committee such as safety and 2 years for the length of the door.
Yeah.
So it seems like there's a consensus about possibly put that into the ordinance to have 1 year just review and safety on this task committee of it.
So, President Smith, if that were in fact the case, do you want to kind of create like a running list and then we'll make a motion to amend the existing legislation and incorporate that into it, or how do you want to go about it?
What I would,
I think Laura just wait. I think what we could do, if councils generally express some ideas, although we don't want to take informal votes without taking actual votes, but if we're just discussing, we can put in the revised resolution that council would ask us to submit. I don't know that we need to take a formal action.
so what would happen then is at the next meeting's come up to a vote, those would already be
Those
intended.
the administration would make the changes council suggesting through this process.
All right, so that really takes care of the first 2 items, which is the number of year and period of review, so we'll do an annual review of that. One of the things to kind of add into that, I know it's not necessarily on this list that they have here on the recommendation that Laura had presented to us, but it kind of comes into this review period. There was a discussion from council that they would like to see these groups of businesses create an entity to be that one go-to port group to for the city to contact should there be any issues, as well as to bring any issues to the city. Is that something that should be incorporated in this review period? Let's say that there's a 6-month time period to actually have that group enacted, or at least some sort of formal organization that is going to be the representative for the DORA. I know, I believe Councilman Kuhlman, you had mentioned that at the public hearing.
Yeah, I would certainly like some sort of, and maybe that year time period is the appropriate kind of deadline for who to speak to or who's gonna, I guess it could be their time frame to get something together to report to safety committee. I think is the common sense approach to that. Although I would like them to move as quickly as possible and not be procrastinating on that, because I think the initial trials and tribulations that comes with something like this, if it passes, would be very helpful for safety committee, even if it's not at that year review, if it comes up as a topic, to have someone to connect with. So I'd encourage them to have that organization in place and running as soon as possible so that there is someone to answer, but certainly by that year, check up at the safety committee.
So I'm assuming it's something to have in that 1-year review to have one entity in place. That would be something to have on that next recommendation.
And I think we should encourage that that be done before 1 year. I think the time in which it is formed, council or the safety committee could be informed of that. So I do think it's important to have some type of governing body that businesses and the city could actually go to, governing in an unofficial way to represent the downtown area. So I think it's pretty important to do.
I don't disagree. I would like to see something like that if this was to pass within 1 year. Myself, there's other things that are going on that the city's working with these downtown businesses for, and it would be beneficial, I know, to have a group to be able to go to on that. So it sounds to me that I'm looking at Laura is to possibly put that in as ever something that needs to be done by that 1 year review period.
At the latest.
Yes.
Yes.
Going down the list here is the geographical boundaries of DORA. My understanding of the law is that council can set the boundaries. We can take what is acceptable. We can reduce or increase where appropriate these boundaries. And is there anybody here on council that wanted to have that as a discussion? See Mr. Coleman.
Yeah, I would like to, especially since we heard from Matt Templey from Should Fit. Already has plans in place for how this could potentially help his business. So I would like to include at least his business, which is that old post office on 2nd Street. But I personally have no problem with amending the boundary down to Kazmeyer's as well. Although I believe that's where some of the residential district becomes a little closer, make people a little more uncomfortable, so I understand that. But I certainly would like to amend it to include as many businesses as possible. Because we are kind of relying on some sort of economic impact. So that's where I would see amendments on 2nd Street. I'd like that it goes down to the new business on 3rd Street. But I would also propose, and I'm going to kind of put it on 5th Street Pub to make their arguments at the next public hearing and add their names to permit holders. But I personally would be open to extending that down to 5th Street Pub and across the railroad tracks.
Councilman Cohen, have you given any consideration, I'm just throwing this out there, any consideration to what some of the other businesses on 2nd Street that would become included in that might think of this? Because there's other businesses that are, you're trying to get to the old post office, right?
Yeah.
But it's gonna pick up this, it's gonna pick up Huntington Bank, it's gonna pick up all these businesses, or to the extent there are businesses. Should we hear from them as well before we?
I would absolutely invite anybody that is within that boundary to come speak on why.
If I started to interrupt you here, Councilman Coleman, I was just going to add that there is also the city that has the restrooms right there as well. So I'd be curious to know what the service department would think of something like
That
that.
alone might be a good reason to include that in the
Mayor? The application as it was submitted, so certainly those boundaries have been reviewed by the administration as we looked at safety and sanitation concerns as well as signage placement. If you're looking at expanding the proposed boundaries to include new territory, I think we would want to obviously revisit all of those things of how the signage and would be impacted, how the trash receptacles would be impacted, how the safety would be impacted, certainly as if you're looking at progressing past railroad tracks and a major intersection. One of the proposals I guess I would suggest to you is, as you're looking at review periods and as permit holders maybe come into business, the amendment of the DORA does not require the multiple public hearings and the notice requirements. That can be managed at a later time if you want to amend the boundaries. As you gain more information, maybe as additional, the administration has a chance to look at the impacts of what you're suggesting. One of the things I would point out, if you do have your Exhibit A in front of you, I think it was Exhibit A, yes. There is a stub portion, and we addressed this with the business owners. I understand why they've included it, but it was a concern for the administration. The small stub right here past 3rd Street, and it actually extends into I think an area where people wait outside to get into the restaurant, maybe a smoking area that's out there, but it's a path for vehicular travel. It's not a designated sidewalk area. So that little stub portion was a concern for the administration as we looked at these boundaries, because you will have motor vehicle traffic through there. So that would be one that the administration, Bridget, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but that we had originally looked at to say we didn't want to see that included.
Correct. This is the alley that is on the north side of Swig's outdoor patio. And this does take vehicular traffic. So that is one that we were very concerned about, having pedestrians using that as a place, either a waiting area or a place where they were going to consume Dora beverages with that vehicular traffic that utilizes that to get back to our parking lots, and also I think another private parking lot.
On 3rd Street, Louisiana, we have vehicular traffic?
Yes, but they're normal lane widths. This is a narrow alley.
I believe they have sidewalks as well.
Right.
So.
And I do believe that, if I recall correctly, Swig wanted to use that as an extension of their already extended outdoor patio.
Is it potential, do they have that private parking lot that it kind of leads to in the back? So is that basically our public access up to that point, and then it becomes private, and Swig is the owner of that? Are they planning on what I'm getting at, are they planning on using that back parking lot for additional seating or anything
Our
like that?
parking lot is
Okay.
Yeah,
I
that's-
just want to make sure.
I think the administration's position is that regarding expansion, the applicants knew what they were requesting, and they felt that this was the best approach to getting something that was reasonable, and then we can reevaluate it. And I think there was some caution from what I've been expressed to me about expanding it too far to cause additional concerns. So that's why we brought it as presented regarding expanding it.
I would also
Council's
add-
choice.
I would also add that I feel that it's very unacceptable in its current form as far as the ordinance goes.
Bridget or Laura? I'm sorry, this little stub that we're talking about next to Swig's,
Correct.
the other permit holders are all in Louisiana, correct? With the exception of 3rd Street?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. There are people that are waiting, that are taking advantage of the Dora. Have to wait on Louisiana Avenue, correct? They don't have a little stub, they don't have an alley next to it.
That would be correct.
They would be waiting on public sidewalk.
Yeah.
Correct, but they're waiting in front of their property. So I guess, why would Swig's, I can understand why they would ask for it, because you're not going to get it if you don't ask for it. But why wouldn't their patrons waiting in front of their business, why would that not be sufficient for them if it is for the rest of them?
We do believe it's sufficient. And we are just concerned about having that within the footprint currently, because that is an access point not only for private parking lots, but also the public parking lot off of East 2nd Street.
And so elimination of that stub portion would keep anyone who's enjoying the Dora at least out onto the sidewalk area and keep them from standing around in the area where a vehicle may be going.
I think that it's probably important to say that the Dora is on not one but 2 state routes, and basically what we're talking about is drinking in the streets. I don't think that's safe.
Well, so regarding boundaries, is there any other comments?
So I guess one question, go ahead, Mr. Andrews, I know you've been waiting be
Well,
patient with that process.
I just wanted to make sure that the petition is requesting that stub, and we're discussing whether to include it or not. I mean, I just want to make sure I understand, correct? And if I heard the administration correctly, that's not a that is part of the petition, but it's not.
We would not recommend expanding, and we have some concerns with that part.
Stub on the alley next to Square. Okay. And I guess as a quick follow-up, there were, inside the 5 will be, that's an alley, I believe, as well. Does that have sidewalks? I mean, is it in the plans to have sidewalks?
That alley has a sidewalk in front of their front entrance, which is actually off of the alley. So we are actually in discussions with Inside the 5 and the developer of all of that property. Since there's multiple access points into public and private parking lots down that alley from both Louisiana, Walnut, and West 2nd Street, that we would consider not vacating that portion of the alley, but rather closing it off and leaving it for pedestrian traffic only, because there'd be enough vehicular routes to get in and out of parking lots. And behind those businesses, that front on Louisiana Avenue.
Is that the plan?
But that is something that we've been having conversations with Matt Dewar about.
So would we be asked to approve that before or before or after that is an accepted plan?
I will ask our law director. I know we've had several conversations with Mr. DeWood. He's actually submitted a plan for our consideration, and it was kind of going along hand in hand with this.
It is, but it's not going to be ready for you to consider prior to considering the Dora. But the pedestrian concerns that we have in that portion of Burlingwood, I guess is what
Yes.
it is, aren't quite the same as what we have, because, as Bridget mentioned, there is sidewalk access at least for people to be standing outside that property without having to actually stand where motor vehicles are going to be traveling.
So this green section, is that Burlingham or is that?
Burlingwood.
Burlingwood, okay.
Yes.
Yes, when the applicants originally submitted this application, they did not realize that the entrance to that restaurant was not on Walnut Street. So they amended their application to include that small portion of Burlingwood, because that brewery actually takes its access off of the alley.
Thank you.
Do you want me to go ahead, Mike? But so, I guess what I would like to see, me personally, in that, I would still like to hear from Fifth Street Pub if we have another public hearing. I don't expect the administration to have us the information on the safety and sanitary concerns for the initial approval, so I'd be open to an amendment down the line. Still would like to hear from them. I would really like to see the 2nd Street addition, because we are talking about a downtown Dora, and we did have a business that is a non-liquor permit holder specifically request to be included, and the public restroom. So I would really like the administration to do an analysis on that quick, and I would like to see that added to the ordinance.
So just to make clear, up to, I'm assuming, the end of 117th East 2nd Street, since that would encompass True Fit as well as the restaurant, the restrooms and.
Yeah, I would say let's go with True Fit. We haven't heard from Kazmeyer's, and if Kazmeyer's has any interest or thinks they can benefit from it, or we think that extending that zone would be a benefit to the community, we can add it to the amendment as was suggested. But me personally, I would like to see it extended to that far. I think it makes sense. It's downtown Doral.
Councilman Coleman, I have a question. So East 2nd to the edge of True Fit's, to the easterly edge of True Fit's property. Going south, though, you mentioned the public restrooms would be across the street. Are you just saying just to capture?
I would capture
that
sidewalks on both sides.
One question I have, and I thought we'd bring this up for discussion, is I know we have the boat club down at the base, and I'm not sure what the boat club's interest is. But we also have public docks that people, I saw this weekend, parking their boats and coming up into some of the restaurants. Has that been given any consideration from the administration, possibly moving it down towards those public docks? So we have voters from around the community coming park and vote?
No consideration.
No consideration.
We do not allow alcohol in city parks.
That's
That's
correct.
actually a street down
Oh,
along down to the base there. The park would be to
The boat club is part of the park. And also, Jan is correct, there is no alcohol allowed in the parks. And also, the boat club is a private club.
But just to be clear, the streets are public.
The streets are
and
public,
not
so
park,
it's
and that's what
considered
I'm suggesting.
Louisiana Avenue. So not talking about through Hood Park, but down along the street there, like headed down to the.
I think one of the initial problems that I spoke to Sylvania on was that people, when you give them access like that to a park, they did have issues with people utilizing, which makes sense.
How would we enforce it?
It would be very tough to enforce, although I do get the sentiment of wanting to walk down to the river with a Dora cup. But that was one of the issues they said early on, was getting people not to take their drink to a park bench.
No, that makes sense. So I guess at this point, really the only thing to look at, I don't know if there's anybody that's 100% in favor of going over the railroad track since you said it that far at this point. I know it's something to look at to consider. However, I guess to look at from the city side, it's at least on East 2nd Street, moving through up to Truth
Yeah.
and seeing what the city's concerns are with that before our next vote.
And I would just like to add to that 5th Street. Part of the reason I brought that up is that in the initial presentation, I don't know if everyone was there for the first meeting, but it came across to me that it was not presented as part of the proposal right away because they did think if they included it, there was a chance that they would be approved.
And that's correct, and I recall hearing that I think history wouldn't mind it. My only concern is there's a large gap between the two restaurants, and unless there's something in there to really fill that, I'm not sure if that would be appropriate at this time. But
Which is why it makes sense to me as an amendment, maybe down the line, but I'd certainly like to hear from them if they have a desire to be included.
That was the case, I want to hear from the youth parents too, because
Yes.
they cater to the kids.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And is there any other discussion on the boundaries at this point?
I would say something. I would say that it was not a part of the original plan. And why are we trying to extend it for one person?
Next on the list here is hours of operation for DORA. I know that there's going to be quite a bit of comment. We've received some questions regarding that from some citizens, and I was hoping to get some thoughts on what some of us have up here on the hours of operation for DORA.
I personally believe that it should run that Sunday to. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll speak up. I personally I do have an issue with the hours as it currently stand. I'd like to see them amended Sunday through Thursday from noon to 9, and then Friday and Saturday from noon to 11. I don't think people I don't think it'd be that hard and cause that much confusion among servers and the people drinking. I think we sell people short sometimes. And that's just my personal opinion. I'm open to all and every suggestion.
So to make sure I understand correctly, noon to 9 p.m. on Sunday through Thursday, and then Friday and Saturday, noon to 11 p.m.
Yes. Well, yeah.
Is
They
that
have to stop serving crackers. They can't serve something that they have to stop serving, don't they? Or am I
I think
wrong?
they have to. I think they stopped serving at 2 a.m. I'm sure she was here to answer that question.
Yeah, no.
What did they propose for that?
So the proposed hours for everyone is 12 p.m. To 11 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Sunday.
I would add, so part of the conversations I had with other communities and business owners was that the people that had alternating hours, like Jan is suggesting, recommended to start with having just a baseline everyday hours so that there's no confusion for enforcement purposes or serving purposes, just a consistent thing. If it's not, I'd recommend that our cup design include what the hours are. But I personally think to start, I would not like to see this go past 10 p.m. Just to kind of ease everybody's fear. I'm open to amending that later. But I also would say I kind of like what Bowling Green did as far as the restrictions on time of year as well, and I'd be open to that. I don't think there's going to be much need for a door-up beverage aside from special permit holders and maybe Winterfest and things like that outside of certain months of the year.
Do you have an idea of what you would?
I believe Bowling Green. I think Bowling Green did Memorial Day to Labor Day, which makes sense. But I would argue that Ohio can still have beautiful weather through Halloween or perhaps Thanksgiving. But I guess my purpose, I would like to hear what other people think about limiting some of the winter door-up options.
Well, I think the weather itself will limit the door option.
Yeah, that would be the reason for.
I'm not concerned about that.
I just didn't know if we are worried at all. I guess my thoughts behind that, are we worried about universities close to us being in session affecting what we actually want this door to provide? And if so, that's one of the outs. I personally am not really worried about that. I don't see a lot of college parties in Perrysburg.
Say how much that students have enough money to drive back and forth.
But here's also the thing. If they have a door on Bowling Green that limits what they can do outside and we have it open out here, potentially they're coming here.
Well,
But
yeah.
hey, it's just a thought.
I think beer is a little bit cheaper in Wilson.
So Corey, I like your idea of being consistent, 12 to 10.
I could go with 12 to 10.
I think the two that might be challenged with that would be Swig and Inside the 5. But if that's what we want to convey some confidence in the community regarding this, then, but I do think consistency would be good, so that everybody knows every day what it is.
Yeah, that's my thoughts exactly, and like I guess it's been part of the conversation throughout this. If we get through the initial fears and we're seeing benefits or we're not seeing adverse effects that are negative, then maybe it's time to present an 11 o'clock door up. But until then, I would like to err on the side of caution, so to speak, as far as hours, because I think those are legitimate concerns. People are publicly urinating or vomiting in people's yards already that live close to that district. I would not be happy if that were my property. And if we can limit the drinking hours to a reasonable hour, which I think 10 p.m. is. Other people may argue on that.
If that's an issue, we can eliminate it altogether.
Yeah, well, exactly. So I would like to see this be successful if we are past it. I think at 10 p.m.
And we're just talking about outside. That doesn't mean.
Correct. It doesn't mean they have to stop service. It's just the door itself. So having that beer outside.
Yeah, I've already kind of expressed where I'm at on this so far, but I guess I'm curious, do we have to keep it simple for these people because they're going to be drinking alcohol? And we don't want to make it hard for them to understand there's different hours in 2 days of the week? I mean, all kinds of businesses have different hours for very legitimate reasons. They don't assume that their customers are stupid and can't, tell time. I don't understand the reason for trying to keep it so simple.
Again, just like I said,
We're expecting them to adhere to all kinds of rules with these DORAs, but we're going to change the time limit because we don't think they can handle 2 days being different. Well, how they can handle the rest of the compliance with these rules? I just think that the reasoning behind it, I don't think the reasoning is.
And I wouldn't use the word simple. I would use the word consistent. I'm not sure we're, simple is.
But what's your reason for keeping it consistent?
Just so people have the knowledge consistently.
Because it's easier to remember. It's simple.
Yeah, and I'm not going to use that word.
Okay.
it's for consistency and staff issues and enforcement. So when I talked to Sylvania, that was one of the things they suggested. When I talked to the city manager in Powell, that was one of the things that he had heard from several municipalities. So that's the reason I'm bringing it up. I would like to see this successful if implemented. So I'm trying to adhere to the suggestions that were given to me when I was talking to the people that have already implemented it.
I would say that I have a real issue with this. We don't have a plan in place, a real plan in place for security. We don't have a real plan in place for sanitation. And I really highly doubt that the restaurant owners are going to have time to go out and take care of all of that themselves.
Okay.
I guess one other thing I'd like to bring up as it relates to timing, whether it's the time of the day or the time of the year. Someone spoke up at the last public hearing. Female, I don't remember which one it was. She currently has a business in Sylvania. I think it's the gal that's doing the thing on 3rd Street. And she said that they have found that during special events is when the door has the greatest positive impact on their liquor sales during special events. And so that would likely be the case here, I would presume. But it's those special events are the very times when we bring all the families downtown. So the times when the doors will most likely be successful, if you measure that in terms of liquor sales, would be the times when the most children are uptown, meandering around with their parents or without their parents. And I don't know if anyone has any opinions on whether they think that's a good idea, or if we would want to limit it, because I guess if that were the case, to me the obvious suggestion would be don't allow door hours during special events, but then that's going to kill the very times when they're most successful for the people that want the door. I don't know if anyone has anything they want to add to that.
Councilman Tuesday, it's funny that you mentioned that Chief Jones had sent the law director and myself an email perhaps earlier this week, although today is only Tuesday, I think.
Last week it was possible.
So maybe it was Friday. Maybe it was Friday. But he does have a concern that during certain special events downtown, that there may not be the ability to police them, to staff them appropriately, not know what the sanitation situation is going to be like. So he is asking for council to consider that perhaps special events have to deal directly with the Director of Public Safety to discuss the sale hours of Adora, policing of Adora, if they have to require the hire of special police officers in addition to our normal officers that are out and about, just to make sure that there's enough people on hand. He specifically mentioned the holiday parade. He mentioned Harrison Rally Day, that would be very impossible for him and his staff to police that appropriately with thousands of people down there.
I would add that the downtown has always traditionally been a very family-oriented place. It's not a party place. People bring their families down there, their children, etc. I don't think they bring them down there to stand around and drink. I think they can do that inside the restaurant and/or bar. They can do that on the terrace. They don't need to be going up and down the street like that or bothering children per se. I don't think families are going to be wanting to bring their children down where there's a lot of drinking, which is basically open containers, I see it.
I guess what I was going to ask is, so when we do an analysis on approving those special permits, is that something we can take into account when they apply for that special permit? They need to account for the increase for sanitation requirements and safety because of the existence of Adora now.
I do believe we can, under our parade assemblage permits. I don't believe, though, if a door is in place with certain hours in place, that we could require a modification of those hours of the door with an assemblage permit. I would think that the door hours would override that.
That's correct.
Why don't we bake something into the legislation that carved that exception out?
I mean, I think that is something that Chief Jones was hoping to have some flexibility on that, so he could sit down with the event organizers and the door permit holders to discuss what's the best course of action to take in terms of safety, in terms of the size of the audience that may be coming in, to look to be able to adjust hours, as I mentioned, or require additional security, depending on what the event is.
Because, like, for example, those events, let's just take Harrison Rally Day, benefit would be to downtown businesses. That event is actually sponsored by the chamber, not the convention bureau, but the convention bureau does farmers markets.
So this is, go ahead, Jan, sorry.
My question is this, if we go to them and ask them, they can vary their hours at our request, the liquor permit holders, correct? If we know there's a special event coming up, and we go to them and say, hey,
I think we actually have to have this in the actual ordinance itself.
Right.
Once the ordinance is set, then they can legally do.
Right, so you're establishing the hours within the ordinance itself, and those permit holders are going to be relying on the hours you set in your ordinance to print them on their cups, to print them on their signs. They don't have the flexibility to just modify that then due to a special event. However, I know in at least addressing, looking at the application, they were open to working with the chief of police during special events. I think if we can propose some language to you as to how we manage it, we would want to include it in the legislation itself to try and address the chief's concerns.
Interrupt you here real quick. As a law director, do you have any suggestions on, at least our current law director for a little longer, which we wish was longer, do you have any suggestions on what we can do to put something like that into the code?
No, but this isn't off the top of my head. I think what the chief and what the city administrator are suggesting is a good point. You establish the hours of the DORA as it would relate to the calendar year, right? But in the event of the special events take place within the DORA boundaries, that whoever our committee is, we're dealing with the DORA, is subject to, those hours are going to be subject to the review of the Director of Public Safety, the Chief of Police, and that put it on the administration to allow us to work and modify those hours during that special event. I think that's probably how I would word something like that.
So again, the downtown organization is essential to get for things like
Correct.
this especially.
Correct.
I think we could easily accomplish two birds, one stone, is that we have to work with the downtown business organization in order to establish those hours during special events. Without the downtown business organization, you can't establish an hours or other costs, covering of other costs like that.
I don't think it would be unreasonable to say that Pearson Realities is the one that jumps out at me, that we identify as never, just because of the 10, 15,000 people we get here. So the others could be part of an ongoing management with the downtown organization. Because Pearson Realities is just so huge that I just think it creates a real burden for our police specifically. And we certainly all know what kind of pressure they're under.
Mm-hmm. Okay. There are those events that you know are going to happen in a normal year, and so those could be identified.
If I can make a suggestion from what I'm hearing in this conversation, can we have something proposed for when this comes up as to what will be your recommendation put into that
Yes.
language?
Yes.
But there are also, I just kind of want to clear this up for myself a little bit too. There are also events throughout the year where we invest additional money into safety and sanitation for assembly permits, correct? So like the Black Lives Matter protest, we had additional police force here. Did we incur extra costs for that?
I believe that one actually was managed with who we had on duty, but
Okay.
I don't know the specifics of that. Normally, when we do have a special event, though, those events are responsible for paying a portion of that cost of the public safety, the additional safety forces that go into manning it.
So it'll still go into the approval of the special permit itself?
The way that they've done in the past, I have no reason to anticipate modifying that, but we can't see into the future, right?
Okay.
So if I gather today, for the hours is a consistent hour of noon to 10 p.m. And then look at adding some similar language in that for special events, depending on the size that the administration can work with the downtown business entity as well as the special permit. So so with that, we'll move on to the next item here, which I know has already been talked about a few times. Any specific public health and safety requirements for DORA. So this can include items such as whether they have facility park formulas, which we did talk about as well. To ensure the existence of one entity the city is starting with, the type of safety measures taken within the DORA. We talked about the special event regulation just now, and then specific sanitation requirements during the operation of the DORA. So I think at this point we'd be discussing the sanitation requirements as well as some safety measures. Is there anything anybody would like to add on to that?
My concern would be this, as far as liabilities go. I think that the bar restaurant / owners should have their own liabilities or liability insurance that they take care of, indemnities. And because otherwise the city's going to be having issues. We're talking about 2 state routes.
And I know I've actually been in conversation with our law director who is, I think, is going to reach out to our insurer carrier to see what that could be on the city. But I believe most of the businesses would depend on their liquor license and liquor liability at that point. But hopefully we get some clarification on that as well.
I would think that they would need more insurance or something like that's something that you're suggesting, such as a DORA.
Is this something we can find out what Sylvania's done, what Toledo's done, and what the other DORAs have done with respect to insurance? I'm sure we don't need to recreate the wheel.
As far as DORA goes in Sylvania, it's not even half a block. That's kind of a joke, quite honestly.
If we can find a similarly situated DORA, I'm sure they've grappled with that same issue. Find out what they've done.
Sure, that's fine. I mean, most of the liability would still be on the liquor holder. But surely that's something we can.
I'm sure something happens when you go out there and they can't.
Yes. I would assume it follows under the over-serving liabilities.
Yeah, we can find out what other people do. If there's any reason that we should have to increase our, I'm not aware, but we will find out that any municipalities had to increase their insurance coverage because of the existence of a DORA. But we can, certainly it's a fair question and we'll get an answer.
Any other questions regarding safety or sanitation at this point, or any thoughts or suggestions with that within this DORA?
Mr. Smith, would anybody in the audience have anything to say?
Well, we're just going through a checklist and know if you got anything else that we're down.
You got one more thing to go after this.
I did hear the shop owner express a little bit of concern on really nice weekends that sometimes the trash on Sunday night is pretty full. That's the only thing, that's the only negative I've ever heard.
Ms. Cabot, I know that at the last public hearing, I asked a question about the sanitation, how often those are checked, and I believe at the time that it was thought they were checked every day.
Not yet, no.
I believe they're checked every morning, and then the garbage is actually load full if it's full. On the weekends, we do have 2 people that we bring in at overtime on Saturdays who clean public restrooms typically, except for this point in time that we're in. And then they'll also do the trash removal uptown and at the parks.
So right now we're not doing the overtime right now, so they're not out there to check it on the weekends.
Correct.
Okay. So that might be might be a COVID recent issue versus.
They did say they just noticed it this year.
Yeah. So.
We will let them know why.
Yes.
Hearing no other discussion on this topic, I will move on to the final one on here. This is one for the location of signage for DORA and the steps to approve such signage, which I would believe would include the Historic Landmarks Commission. Being that this isn't an historic district, if this does go through, I believe it would be appropriate to have those signs approved by the Historic Landmark Commission.
Mr. Smith, I think 26 signs is a bit excessive as proposed.
Do you have any thoughts on what you would like to see with that? Or?
Well, I'd not like to see 26 signs proposed, and having looked at Sylvania, they don't have all these big signs proposed. They put little tiny things in their windows.
Who bears the burden of cost of all the signs?
The DORA.
Yeah.
So there are some upfront fixed costs
Yes.
associated with this?
Yes, any costs associated with the DORA, whether it be the cups that need to be purchased, signage, marketing materials, liability insurance, whatever the case may be, that is all on the DORA and the participants. That's not
Are
a
they aware of
secret.
that? Because someone spoke on their behalf at the last public hearing and said they were not.
They were incorrect.
I know they were, so I asked the question, see what he was talking about. But
So the
Yes,
city
and
had
I
a hearing.
mentioned in the past that I know that in the Dora that is in downtown Toledo, they have a host organization that manages the administration of that program. That's actually housed in a essentially a subgroup of the Convention and Visitors Bureau in downtown Toledo. They purchase the cups, they distribute the cups, they purchase the marketing material, they pay outside organizations to go around clean up cups, clean up debris on sidewalks, pay for some additional security, and that all happens through the administration of that organization.
Okay. I have some questions about the cups, which I think kind of feeds into sanitation. Does anybody have the cup design? I don't think I've seen it. Yeah, I know it says see attached every time
It was included in your packet back in June.
I know it was in one of the original packets that came forward. They had some samples that they proposed. I think they're very similar to the samples that they proposed first time around. Yeah, there's a logo on one side. There's hours of operation, I think, on the other side. But let me take a look through.
I would recommend that we had a map too, potentially. And I think I would very much like to see the railroad tracks on that map because I think that's a great landmark for people to refer to. I know the signs are going to be there, and it does seem like all the signs. I don't have a problem with that. However, I do think that if there's a map and the railroad tracks are part of that map, people have a landmark to refer to, even if they're not familiar with town, so that they know where they can carry it.
I disagree with you. It sounds to me like we're treating these people like they would be terribly irresponsible.
The reason I'm going through these things is, I'm trying to keep it consistent. I'm trying to make it so it's successful and easy to follow. So, yeah, you may say it's simple or easy, but I'm not saying that because they're going to be drinking. Yeah, but there's an inference being made that because they're drinking, they're not going to be able to follow it. That's not what I'm...
No, I asked if that wasn't the reason why I didn't make it.
Okay, so that's not why I'm making it simple. I think just in general, as a general rule of thumb, whenever you're implementing a new policy, especially because it's going to be new for Perrysburg if we approve it, is getting that information out there, at least for the initial.
They're not here. We haven't seen the. I'm not. Well, that's something that council can choose to do, but I think they might add additional cost to preparing the. Right, I don't know how much it would cost, if anything. But to some degree, it's going to be on the enforcement. Is going to be on the property owners anyway.
Right.
If they're giving it to our cup, they have to do some explaining to the person already. So I'm not sure that we want to micromanage it that far.
I'm just saying what I would like to see on it. Because it's part of the proposal. I'm just letting the people that are in charge of picking out these designs. In my opinion, if you want this to pass review, these are some of the suggestions that I would recommend and that I would like to see. But I also would like to see a recyclable cup. So I don't know whether they can have a disposal bin at the entrance of their, I know they have to dispose of the Dora cup upon entering another building or a liquor permit holder. I would like to see the liquor permit holders trying to recycle these things if we can. And having some sort of bin that they manage that's specifically for these cups. I'm not saying I wouldn't pass it if they don't do that, but that's what I would like to see. And I think that helps with the sanitation, and I think it, helps with reduce, reuse, recycle. So.
I haven't heard any consideration here toward anybody that is near a church or residences or anything of that nature, or the school, St. Rose School, or the people affected by that. I haven't heard any of that mentioned at all tonight. It seems like everybody seems to be thinking more about 4 or 5 people, and I think that's really unfair to other businesses throughout the city of Perrysburg. Why the favoritism?
Do you have anything else, Jonathan, on your list?
At this point, I do not. I think that was the end of the list on here, unless there's anything else that anybody saw about this proposal.
Is there the right to add to that list, though?
Jonathan, on the issue of signage, I envisioned some of these, they said 2 signs, I'll take the first one. 2 door entrance signs on both sides of Louisiana facing north at Front Street. I envisioned that the sign on one side would say you're entering, and on the other side it would say you're leaving. which would reduce this. You know, I think Deborah's right, she added these up and they come up to 26, I'd say it would be about half that. Because you know, it would be kind of silly to have.
So the two-sided signs is what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, just have one sign, on one side you're coming in, one side you're going out. And that's the way I read it. I don't know if we need to say something about the dimension of the signs. The signs that's so big, you can't hardly find them. They're 9 inches by 12 inches. And I went over there to look at it, I had a devil of a time finding the signs you were looking for them.
And I know Toledo's is
Yeah,
pretty
well,
prominent, you can see those really easily.
Yeah, they're very prominent there, so.
So is Brooklyn's.
Yeah, I
So you want to put some requirements in there for the size,
Yeah,
the
to
minimum
make sure.
size, and then maximum whatever the code.
yeah, I think that would be good.
Okay, so hopefully administration can work on something to figure out what that would be. I'm looking at-
You got nothing to do, yeah, we'll find out the signage that we mentioned. We also, I think we probably do have to make sure they're in compliance with historic landmarks or any other things, and they can't put them on our telephone poles and some others, so we'll have to figure something out about that. But, you know, they would have, if they're going to be done, they should be visible, and they should be appropriate for being downtown. Because that's,
And ideally, they should go through the Historic Landmarks Commission to make sure that,
that's fine.
and maybe that's something, but just a reminder in the code on this, that this is in the Historic Landmarks District, that it should go through that committee.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. You know, that's gonna delay the onset of the door probably till winter, but that's okay, I guess.
My only concern is that if we're putting a sign on it, I think that we have to put it, am I incorrect in that, or? And then, Laura, you might as well stand up here, Laura.
That's all right. No, that's all right. We actually talked about this over the weekend. We got a question from HLC on the issue. And it's the administration's past experience that something like this would have gone in front of the Historic Landmarks Commission. We take our position as a certified local government very seriously, so we want to utilize that commission to review those types of things that take place in the district.
Is that something that we can ask you on the next agenda item I don't know how, I know we're jumping way ahead here, but let's say that the city approves this, or city council approves this. At approval, can it be on the agenda to help expedite some of that?
I will certainly talk to planning and zoning and have them work with the chairman of the HLC to get that in front of them as soon as they can. You know, you're also allowing for some sort of a waiting period to get an organization up and running and things like that as well. So, you know, we can see what flexibility we can write in the ordinance to recognize the initial startup time to be able to get them going, so maybe they're not waiting until winter before they can start utilizing the Dora too.
Which we're not using it in the winter anyway.
Then, Laura, to your last point, and I don't believe our earlier discussion was that they have to have some formal or informal organization formed before they begin.
I don't think that's what your discussion was.
Replaced by the 1-year snap.
Correct.
I mean, informally, they have a leadership group.
Sure.
You know, it's kind of last man standing, whoever, after all your other compatriots leave behind, you guys are left.
No, that was my impression as well, that by that 1-year anniversary, you wanted to see that 1-year review period, I should say.
Okay,
You want to have that in
clarify
there,
it.
yeah.
Okay. Anyone else from council have, we'll just start at this end and go this way. If you've had any other comments or questions that we haven't already covered, do that.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, sure. I would say that I have a lot of concerns about it, as I've mentioned, but I think the quality of life will be affected tremendously. We would be changing the face of historic Perrysburg and Perrysburg as we know it. And I feel that we received a wallet hub, I believe, first in the state in 2018. In 2019, we received number 2. And it wasn't based on if we had a Dora or not, or drinking downtown. It was based on what we had as our quality of life here in Perrysburg. And I don't think we'll be on the wallet hub list as a high priority if Dora does become a reality.
Thank you.
I think if these amendments are added and we keep taking this conversation seriously and set it up for success, it could be very beneficial. So I appreciate the conversation we're having. I encourage the public to come up to the second public hearing and give your input, especially the businesses we haven't heard from that could be impacted by this. And as Deborah said, we have been voted one of the best communities. I think by doing things like this, we stay ahead of the trend. We stay ahead of that curve, and we keep ourselves on that list by doing things like this. As a young entrepreneur myself, these are the types of things that people my age enjoy when they go visit other cities, but I'd like to see that in my city. So,
Do you make common traditions to the Dora conversation, Jim? We can wait till we're passing it next time if you want. Okay.
No, I guess the only comment I would make is if we're all, I'm guessing we're all interested in hearing what the public has to say about it. And when the public does come forward to say something about it, I'm assuming they're doing that because they're trying to influence 7 votes, or 7 voters up here to vote one way or the other. And so when they do come forward to try to influence us to vote one way or another, I think it's perfectly appropriate and should be questioned as to why their opinion is what their opinion is, to see if their opinion is based on what their opinion is based on, I guess, because if I have questions about what someone's saying and I want to get to the bottom of it, it not only benefits me, but it benefits anyone else up here that's listening to that person that might not have the same questions that I have, because I have different experiences than the other people up here. Just like you have different experiences than what I have, and you would have questions that I would have never thought of. And then when they answer your questions, it would make perfect sense to me why you ask that question. So I think when they do come forward and they say more, I'm going to continue to probe and ask why they think the way they think. And if I can't get answers that I think are satisfactory, then that's going to probably influence my decision in a way that they didn't want me to. So.
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor. I will just say a couple things real quick. I can't speak for every council member up here, but I know that I've read every single request that has and comment that has come to us, either for or against this DORA, and I do appreciate everyone's concerns on this. What I ended up doing to come to where my decision is going to end up lying on this once we get the final version, I do intend to support this DORA. And where I ended up coming around to this was reading through our comprehensive plan back in 2008. And just to reference a few things in this plan as to why I think that this is appropriate here in downtown. Under the economy section, which the objective 3 states, and I'll just read just the titles instead of boring everyone with all the details. It says that strategy 3.1 was to continue to promote revitalization and redevelopment in and around downtown. And 3.4 also mentioned encourage collaboration among the downtown stakeholders, which I think we're able to do with this. Also, under the urban form, 3.4 is encouraging our city here to support existing and new local businesses that provide dining, retail, and entertainment options. And the purpose that DORA was created in the state was specifically for this exact reasoning. And I think that downtown is an appropriate place for it, and I do plan to support this within some limitations. But if we do start to see the issues that some have raised me concerned, I would be in complete support of removing that DORA in downtown as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well said, President Smith. My comments are going to address opinions. I don't care if you've been a 2-month citizen of Perrysburg or a 30-year citizen of Perrysburg. All your opinions mean equally and the same to me, whether or not you bothered to learn the history of Perrysburg. Your voice and your counts, and it doesn't matter to me. And I will listen to everyone's opinion and take it all into consideration. Thank you very much.
Tim?
I don't think I need to make a lot of comments. I intend to vote for the DORA. for many of the same reasons expressed by Jonathan and by Corey, and I concur in Jan's observation that whether you invested your home 2 months ago, as she said, or 35 years ago, your voice deserves to be heard. So I look forward to finalizing this, and I look forward to the day we can have the door experience downtown and what it can do for our merchants down there and for the citizens of our town who we heard from many of them. They think this would be a nice enhancement for the city.
Do you have anything you want to add?
Just a couple things. Thank you, Your Honor. So I too am going to support this door proposal with certain modifications. My biggest concerns are, of course, the pressure that these boundaries will put on the police and security and enforcement. And that will be something that I personally observe, and of course we'll be watching the incident reports through the police department. But the main reason for my support is really small business support. We have a downtown that is just the heart of who we are, and if we don't come out in support of them, then I don't feel like I'm going to be, knowing full well that citizens may be opposed to this, people who put their livelihood at stake downtown, and we need to support them.
We had that in my brief. Thank you, President. I'm not aware of any citizen who would like the opportunity to speak. A lot of council I know has received, and the mayor has received lots of emails and other documents. Given the virus situation, some people may not feel comfortable coming. As council all, I think, said they want to make sure that your voice is heard. So if you can't come to council or you want to be heard, emails to council are distributed to everybody, and the administration will guarantee that anybody that sends an email to the administration, it'll get to all the council members so they can fully evaluate the choices. The administration has, I think, 10 or 11 things we're going to look at. We'll work on that. And I want to thank everybody on council for their discussion. I think it was helpful to understanding what's going on and how we're proceeding. So I think it's been helpful to the community to have today's discussion. Are you done?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Just do I cut you off a bunch of times?
There's no one that does want to come up and say anything at this point, probably just Denise.
Yeah, I hear. Oh, yeah, sure. State your name and address, and I guess I'd ask nicely if you could be brief.
I will not be. I am terribly sorry.
That's all right. Well, we'll see how that goes, but we don't want to have duplication of discussion, but sure, go ahead.
Well, first of all, my name is Zach McKenna. I live on 125 East 7th Street. Lived there for the past 22 years of my life, almost 23 next month. So, the first thing I like to say is I'd like to lodge a complaint in the fact that I tried to go and get the DORA petition for the petition for the DORA up at the municipal building today. I was not able to. According to the Ohio Revised Code, that needs to be made public and available to anyone wanting it at all business times.
I think it's been on the city's website.
It is on the website without any of the exhibits.
I think it's been published in certain ways, and the staff is not there today, then we'll certainly have reasonable time to get the documents to you, and we will get those to you. We will make sure that you have those. So
all right.
That's not a problem at all. You have your name and address, you already gave it. We'll make sure you get, our lawyer says we'll get it to you.
I do appreciate that. The second thing I'd like to go into is I'd like to talk about the comments that most of the councilmen just made and councilwomen just made today, saying that you have already made your decision on this DORA without hearing quite a bit of the public's response to it. I haven't got to give my opinion at all. A lot of people I know haven't got to give their opinion at all. They can't necessarily come to these meetings because they work. They have lives to attend to, but their lives will be greatly affected by this change in policy. And the fact that some people hear without hearing full explanation from the public why they oppose or are for this DORA is slightly offensive to me. So, The things I'd like to go into in this meeting tonight are, frankly, issues I have concerning the petition for the DORA. I've read through the whole thing. I've read through the law concerning this, which is, what is it, 1403.82, I believe it was. First of all, according to the DORA application here, it is set forth in the law that they need to have a specific plan in place for sanitation, security, and for public safety and health. Reading their application, I don't see a single bit of a plan here. I'll paraphrase here for the sake of, frankly, they say they're going to patrol the areas in front of the stores for sanitation. That's really about it, reading through their application. They have no feasible plan for the sanitation department of Perrysburg that I can read here. They have absolutely no laid out steps on how to go forward with the plan for sanitation. I see that as wrong. And according to their application here, that trash cans are relatively pretty empty throughout the day. And as I've heard, trash is collected every single day. Well, I will say I took a walk down the streets of Perrysburg today, within the DORA area, seeing that there's trash on the ground in front of these businesses. There is trash filling the trash cans in front of these businesses. If it's collected in the morning, then it's already filled up, and that's without a DORA at the moment. So, I see that as an issue, first of all, because it means there will be a increased weight upon our sanitation that we're not taking into account for this DORA, which, from my understanding, will come into more money needs to go to the sanitation department to fix this issue, as well as more money coming out of the public to pay those sanitation workers, if my understanding is correct. If anyone wants to correct me, I would be happy to hear that. All right. Next thing would be security within the DORA. We have absolutely no security plan from what I can tell here. From their application, I see nothing more than they patrol their own stores or businesses. Some of them said they have security cameras. I've never seen a security camera outside, so I'm guessing these security cameras are inside the businesses. That's not patrolling the DORA area, that is patrolling your own business. That's an issue. There is talk of getting police officers to patrol this. I see nothing in their application about that. In fact, they specifically say there won't be a need for that. I imagine with multiple people walking around our downtown drinking, it impairs your thoughts, your actions, if you have enough. You can make a bad decision. If that bad decision happens to get in the way of someone else, police need to become involved. That means we need to have some sort of policing in the area. I feel like we have not properly taken that into account. Next thing would be public health and well-being. Simply to me, the first of all, I think the fact that we're trying to put signage in our historical part of Perrysburg, I think that's a little wrong when I haven't even seen the signs because I can't get to the exhibits for the signs. That seems like an issue. I like to see the historic part of Perrysburg stay the historic part of Perrysburg without the added, and in my mind, without the need for a DORA, with people possibly walking around hurting some of the, by accident purely, hurting the downtown, the historical aspects of the downtown. These are things that should be preserved, not put in danger by any accident that might occur. Because when people are drinking, accidents occur. It's a plain simple fact. I mean, I have friends who've gone out drinking and stumble over something and break a window or something. It's horrible. It's a sad event, but it's an accident. But it's something that we need to take into account. One of the other things I'd like to point out is in their application, we have a, excuse me as I get my paperwork here together. They make positive economic impacts. Reading through this, it is purely anecdotal, circumstantial evidence. They have no actual data, numbers, proof that any of this is going to happen. Sure, increased foot traffic could mean more sales, but it doesn't necessarily mean it will. There is, like I said, absolutely no data out there. You can claim as much as you want that having people walk around the downtown will bring in more sales, but until I see evidence proving that with certainty, I'm not going to believe it. And I think the council should take that into account when thinking about this. That so far all we've had throughout all these discussions are anecdotal evidence. There's no solid data, there's no solid facts, and the fact that we're trying to push this through without those seems a little haphazard in my mind. And really, I mean, I see that as one of the biggest issues that we should take into account here. So, I know I will in future meetings have more to say, but I will also yield at this point for brevity's sake. If anyone has any questions, I'd love to answer them.
I have a question.
Sure.
Did you listen to any of the door hearings on the internet?
Sorry?
Have you listened to any of the door hearings that are on the internet?
I was at the last hearing, personally, but I believe I missed the hearing before that. I've not seen that on the internet either.
That's just all I want to know. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much for articulating your position. I appreciate that.
I do
Also
appreciate
that. And we will make sure we get exhibits and to you. We welcome public comments, so we appreciate that. Okay. I think that pretty much wraps up the...
Anybody else?
Anyway.
Oh, yeah, I was pretty sure that
But I would love more comments like that at the public hearing
I-
as well. That takes a lot of courage to stand up and say what your opinion is, and I think we all appreciate hearing that. So encourage people that share those thoughts to come to the next meeting, public hearing.
All right, so moving on, finance and economic development.
Okay, we are now on fresh. Thank you, Mayor Mackin. We did have a meeting on August 11th. Everybody's got a copy of the committee report. I'm not going to read it to you. The people that are normally present at that committee were there. We discussed the coronavirus funding that we received and how much we've spent. It's almost all gone right now, which is not a bad thing. There's not much money left in that check that we received, was about $8,000 left. The city's spent most of that on things that come before the committee and council to approve. So, finance director's report, we talked about the things we're going to talk about. The health and welfare fund is about half of what it started out for the year. There's no need for concern, from what I can tell. And the Southfire addressed an issue where I have two ordinances. I believe they're both ordinances, aren't they? Yeah, two ordinances that I'm going to ask you to submit regarding street trees. And then the tax commissioner gave his report. And where we were down a lot for the year, we've come back quite a ways in the last, it was in July, estimated income tax payments were finally due for the first and second quarter. So that was the end of my report. It was a 30-minute meeting. The next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, September 8th, 5:30. So the two pieces of legislation that I just mentioned, they're very closely related. One came from like three places without the other. So I was going to move over one. So everybody's okay with that? Great. So I'd like to introduce ordinances 8 and 9, 2020, and move that the rules be suspended to allow for their reading by number and title only, and to dispense with the second and third readings.
Second. Roll call.
Okay, Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coolman,
Yes.
Ms. Materney,
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Ordinance number 8, 2020, An ordinance determining to proceed with the removal and special treatment of shade trees and controlling the blight and disease of same, and for planting, maintaining, trimming, and removing shade trees in and along the streets and within public rights-of-way of the city of Perrysburg and declaring an emergency. And ordinance number 9, 2020, an ordinance levying special assessments for the removal and special treatment of shade trees and controlling the blight and disease of same, and for planting, maintaining, trimming, and removing shade trees in and along the streets and within public rights-of-way of the city of Perrysburg and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Mayor, I have discussion on that.
Well, wait a minute. Hold on.
So I understand that at the county level, they need to act on this in September, so I'm going to move that both of these ordinances be passed as emergency measures.
Second?
Discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be voting no on this. I feel that people are taxed enough as it is. We are in a difficult financial time right now due to COVID virus and possibly further worse financial times as I'm reading many things along the way. So I would say people also do not want to have their trees bothered when they can do them themselves. That's what I often hear as well. So I would say I'm going to be voting no on both of them.
Okay, this just applies to street trees.
Right, that's what I'm referring to.
We're liable if they fall in somebody's car and they're diseased.
I have issue with taxing people and the supposed revenue being $70,000. I think we could be better about recruiting some businesses like Ohio Cat or the Art Chevrolet or things of that nature to help with their taxes. I think putting it on the tax burden on people is wrong at this time.
That's a little bit penny wise, pound foolish, because the liability we would possibly pay out in a diseased tree might more than make up for that. So I would vote yes.
I disagree with you.
I would just add, this is an example, and council members who've been on long enough know that this assessment, which is a special assessment, in Perrysburg, we're a street tree community. A number of our trees, especially the elm trees, and a number of streets were saved due to John Eccles' hard work and dedication, but also because he developed and was able to use this fund to treat those trees. So when you go down Riverford, Greenville, and a number of other drives out in the rivers where there's a bunch of elm trees that are still alive, as a direct result of the talent of the staff of this community and also the willingness of residents to support this special assessment.
Mr. Mayor, I do appreciate Mr. Eccles' efforts, and I've told him many times I do, but I will share with you that I think that just going ahead and doing it, people really don't appreciate that. And they also don't appreciate when they're told that their tree has been removed there and then it's not been replaced. I've heard that many times.
Any other discussion? Roll call.
Okay, Mr. Matuzak.
Yes.
Mr. Coolman.
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Ms. Materney.
Yes.
Ms. Bourne.
No.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's all from me.
Good, Jim. Appreciate it. Service committee?
We have no minutes or meeting or report to give. My next meeting is, I believe, it's a good change to last. But as of now, it's 26 at 5:30. Am I right, Bridget? Correct. Okay.
Thank you. Safety committee?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No report. Our next meeting is August 25th at 6 p.m.
Recreation committee, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have no legislation this evening. I will mention that our next meeting will be September 8th at 6:30 p.m.
Thank you. Planning and zoning?
No report, Your Honor. I'm looking to Mary Jo and for Bridget to tell me what the next meeting date is in September. September 9th at 5:30? Okay. Now it's official.
Mr. McCarthy, do you happen to have a report? I didn't see one in my packet from the last meeting.
No, and Mary Jo gave me a demerit on Monday for not getting the minutes back to her, so it's on my to-do list.
Thank you.
Thank you. Personnel, sorry.
Okay. I do have a couple of reports here. I know that the rest of the council, I was in Tim's position as well. I have a regular meeting and a special meeting that were held. I was a little delinquent with all that's going on with Dora and some hiring. things that I did not review these minutes, so I will just take on 3 meetings, minutes at the next one, for the sake of, well, actually, let me,
You do it first.
I have legislation.
The synopsis.
All right, let's get a synopsis here. All right, and I apologize for not doing this beforehand, so,
So you're gonna go on the reports?
yeah, real quickly. All right, so, yeah, since we have legislation, I apologize for that. We'll get through this quickly. There was a meeting, 5 p.m. on July 28th. We talked about normal people were there, myself, Jim Matuzak, Tim McCarthy, and people from the administration. Talked about a safety coordinator position. Previously, we'd interviewed for a part-time program. It has been Mr. Eccles' recommendation that we consider that for a full-time position. There are a lot of trainings that occur among city staff, and then we also get audits. So they are imploring us to consider a safety coordinator position for a full-time instead of a part-time to help with some of the issues that we may run into if we don't step it up as far as trainings go. They will be providing us additional details at the next personnel meeting. Employee handbook, Michelle Font distributed a copy of draft section 2. The main things that Ms. Alkire wanted us to go over were the overtime calculation in light duty. We will be reviewing this again at the next meeting. And then we reviewed a purchase agreement with NeoGov. NeoGov is the software, and I'm going to read this since it's short. I'll just read this because this is the legislation we're going over tonight. Michelle Font stated that we currently use NeoGov software for the pre-boarding phase of employment. It is how we process applications and handle the hiring process. She requested permission to enter into a 2-year agreement with NeoGov to purchase the onboard and learn modules for a cost of $36,578.50. Michelle Font stated that the onboard module will include all new hire paperwork and will allow current employees to make changes to their withholdings or direct deposit information. The Learn module includes 1,600 topics for training ranging from Excel to management training. Ms. Cabot said that we are paper intensive in a lot of areas, and this is a step of eliminating that. Mr. Coleman asked if there were any other quotes solicited. Ms. Cabot said we did not because there are additional pieces. They are additional pieces to existing software. Michelle Font stated that the portion of the costs can be covered by the CARES Act funds. There was discussion regarding what type of safety training is included in the Learn module in light of the prior discussion regarding the safety coordinator. Michelle Font said that the Learn module allows an employer to make their own videos and upload them into a system for employees to watch, and it tracks the training and notes in the employee's personnel file. Mr. Coleman said that he would like more time to look this over, and a special meeting was scheduled for Monday, August 10th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. prior to the public hearing regarding DORA. We then went into executive session to discuss a appointment or the employment of a public employee. Turning now to the special meeting for the Personnel Committee that was held August 10th. All members were there, including the administration. This again is regarding the NeoGov software. Mr. Coleman called attention to an email committee members received from Michelle Font regarding the need for the NeoGov software. Mr. McCarthy said he clearly understands the need for the onboarding software, but has questions about the Learn module. The committee discussed the Learn component of the software, specifically whether it would be worth the cost. Michelle Font said that the implicit bias training the city employees received last year cost $8,500. She explained that the Learn module will allow employees to do training when it is convenient for them without having to be in the office. Mr. Coleman said he is all for educating employees as long as it will be used. Mr. Matuzak questioned how you would know employees are actually viewing the videos. Michelle Font stated that there are quizzes at the end of the videos. Mr. Matuzak asked about the consequences of not passing the quiz, and Michelle Font said that the employee would have to redo it. Mr. McCarthy asked if there is a report that could be provided to show how much the training is being used. Michelle Font said that there is. Mr. McCarthy said that it's a 2-year commitment, and if after the 2 years it's not being used, we can discontinue it. The committee agreed 3-0 to recommend approval of the agreement with NeoGov in the amount of $36,578.50. which is for 2 years of the onboard and learn modules and includes $2,000 for integration costs. In other business, Michelle Font stated that 4 applications had been received for the law director's position and 16 applications had been received for the city engineer's position. The next regularly scheduled meeting is Tuesday, August 25th at 5 p.m. And with that, I would like to introduce Resolution 38-2020 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only and to dispense with the second and third readings.
Roll call on readings.
Okay, Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coolman,
Yes.
Ms. Materney,
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Okay, resolution number 38, 2020, accepting the proposal and authorizing an agreement with NeoGov in an amount not to exceed $36,578.50 to provide online human resource services for the city of Perrysburg and declaring an emergency.
I move that Resolution 38-2020 be passed as an emergency measure.
Second.
Discussion.
I do have a quick question here, just so that I understand as well. So this is, from what I understand from the report here, this is a 2-year agreement at $36,500 encompasses the full 2 years. And that is all being taken care of at this point through the CARES Act.
That is incorrect.
That is incorrect.
So it is a 2-year contract. It is being prorated for this year's, for the amount of time that we use it. I believe the estimate in that meeting that was given to us was right around $8,000.
So $8,000.
So $8,000 out of that total contract, but we receive half off pricing for one of the years by committing to 2 years.
All right, that's a lot of numbers being thrown at me here at once here.
Yeah. And
Hopefully
I'm sure Bridget can
so
go back
is it
down.
$8,000 for this prorated year?
So the CARES Act funding will allow us to utilize those dollars for software through December 31st of this year. So since this agreement spans multiple fiscal years, this first portion, August through December, we'll use CARES Act dollars to cover the funding. And then in the 2021 budget and 2022 budget, we will be budgeting out the remainder of the costs for both software modules.
Okay, and so this is going to save the city, well, the city this last term, let's say, had spent about $8,500 in one training. Is that-
That's in one citywide training, correct.
Okay.
And we need to do more citywide training on a variety of topics. As mentioned, I think in the legislative summary, we should be doing harassment, workplace harassment, sexual harassment, understanding, people with disabilities, what that means, how to accommodate, human resources, labor law 101, FMLA. There's a lot of standard basic topics we should be covering every year. This will allow us to do that remotely, as well as in our offices, via our computers. And we won't have to hire out for those services. We can do it in multiple locations at the same time. It tracks, you can actually set up training schedules for different levels of employees with different types of training selections out of like 1,600 offerings, as well as you can actually film your own training sessions and upload them to this module and then send out, I won't say requests, but assignments to employees that gives them a list of assignments they have to complete in a certain amount of time and pass each and every one of them. And as they pass them, it's documented in the HR software of NeoGov that we currently use to house all of our personnel files.
Okay. And then this is just for the learning modules itself. And the reason the city is purchasing from NeoGov is because we already are utilizing their service.
Correct.
And I understand the reason of looking at, and maybe this was covered a little bit more in detail. I know, I think Mr. Dusky asked this question, that we're utilizing NeoGov because we already have the services in place, but is there a better option out there that may be more cost effective, even though it may be a different service? I'm trying to understand how the integration works.
So the integration, so currently we utilize NeoGov for our application process. So that's like the intake module for all the applications that come in for positions that are open. What the onboarding then does is as we select those applications that we want to interview, it helps set up all the interviewing with electronically with the applicants As those applicants are weeded down into our final selections, it then sets up timings for drug testing, background checks, psychological testing, depending on the position. It then also takes the data that's in that particular module and puts it into all the forms that ultimately get sent to our payroll system, all the onboarding forms. So it keeps track of all of that and puts everything in somebody's personnel file. Because right now we have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different forms that sometimes all make it to the right location, ultimately Dave Kress's office, for anything from healthcare to PERS, payroll taxes, W-2s. So all that information is housed in one location.
But that's already being currently utilized. This is just adding additional.
So only the application process is currently being utilized. The onboarding piece is what takes all of that other information and wraps it all in and adds on to that application process. It keeps that process moving along.
And I would say that's one of the things we've been trying to do. I've been trying to, our technology 2 years ago was we're still passing paper around different departments. It's all integrated. This is what this software does for personnel-related matters, so that they're all interconnected. There are other competitive entities, but this was what we're using for the first part, and it's competitive price. So it made sense to use.
But there's savings.
The savings would
integrating
be
it together with the same system.
It's consistent with the existing system. It will save efficiencies. It will save us money regarding processing, managing paper, and all that other stuff that you're trying to get away from. So the technology has it all in one place and it's easily accessible. And also the training component is an additional part of that. But right now, we don't have anything that goes after the initial resumes are submitted and they're all submitted. This is the same system. So.
I think Jim has discussion.
Bridget, or maybe Laura, just take this opportunity since this is it sounds to me, based on a comment you made, brought something up to me that you had mentioned that, this will be prorated this year or go into the 2021 budget and into the 2022 budget. Can you explain to council, maybe for the benefit of some of the newer people, we're looking at a long-term contract and we're approving the spending of the money now, but you had made mention that it's going to be in future budgets.
Correct.
And how that works as far as whether it binds council in a future budget because we passed this, or how that all plays out since you're going to pay for it. How are you going to pay for it? What's the timing of it?
We won't pay for it all up front. We'll pay for it incrementally. So year one gets paid for, but year one will be paid for out of 2 different funding sources. One will be, half of it will be, almost half of it will be CARES fund. The other half will be general fund money.
Which will come out of this year's budget.
Which will come out of this year's budget. Then in year 2, which will be, midway through next year, we'll be funding the second full year, which will come partially out of next year's budget. Well, it'll actually come all out of next year's budget, but it'll span 2 fiscal years.
So here's what I want people to understand is we're approving the spending for that now, but then we have to approve next year's budget next year. So does it
You'll
become
approve
an
next year's
opportunity
budget this
to
year.
say no to that line item in the budget, even though they've already approved the spending for it?
If you don't have the funding source for that.
So while we're saying yes here, if it doesn't play out the way we expected to play out the first year, we can always not do the second year because we won't have paid for
During the
it
budget
yet.
process.
So we're not entering into a contract with NeoGov that we're bound by to pay for that second year in next year's budget then, right?
If
Right.
it isn't funded, we would not be bound.
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Gotcha.
And I mean, we looked at this internally. I'll just add, I mean, you're looking at a contract that I think is, $15,000 or so per year. But when we look at the discount that we were getting, by putting it in a 2-year, we wanted to put that in front of city council because it exceeded that threshold, even though each year it was still less than.
This specific piece of legislation, or just conceptually how that works. When we're
that.
agreeing to spend money in the future years, we still have.
You have to set the budget.
We still have
Yes.
a budget it's got to get through the budget, those future years.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
And as Laura pointed out, although the budget, the amount is under $25,000 threshold, several years, it comes over if we want to come to our council.
My comment was, I imagine working for a government entity for 30 years, so a lot of, I won't say a lot, but occasionally paperwork for personnel issues does not make it in the personal file. This will eliminate some of that, won't it?
Yes.
Yes, that's very important for obvious, various variety of reasons.
All right, any other discussion? If not, roll call.
Okay, Mr. Van Huzen,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak,
Yes.
Ms. Materney,
Yes.
Mr. Coolman,
Yes.
Ms. Bourne.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Personnel, you're done? Public utilities?
Thank you, Your Honor. I do not have a report here today, and our next scheduled meeting is going to be on August 26, 2020, at 6:30 p.m.
Any other business for council?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I have one question, if I may. Very simple one. I got here a few minutes late, so I'm not sure. Am I correct in thinking that you're going to have another public hearing like this one at the next council meeting?
There's not going to be a public meeting per se, but it'll be coming before council for discussion and vote, however council proceeds.
With public comment?
Yes.
Can I make a comment real quick?
Sure.
One of the things I keep hearing in my emails is how everybody loves downtown Perrysburg, and I do too. It's quite quaint, beautiful. And I'm very concerned about an article I read in Bloomberg report about the loss of small businesses. So I hope, and I know we're proactive in helping them in every way, but I would suggest also that the commercial real estate owners work with their renters in these hard times, because we'll be losing businesses who can't afford to make the rent payments, and that will be a great shame and affect our downtown quaintness, you guys know.
Quaintness of downtown.
Thank you, and so I hope they will work with their businesses, because some rent is better than no rent.
Thank you. Any other business? Not, we're adjourned.